Hey y'all, I'm Reese, and welcome to Making Meaning. Making Meaning is a podcast by the Cohere Collective, here to guide you along your path to make meaning in a way that makes sense for you. This week, I sat down with development manager Kaitlyn Cahill. A friend and I met Kaitlyn at a concert at the beginning of this year, and I truly believe it was serendipity that we were brought into each other's lives. Kaitlyn and I immediately clicked, and after talking with her about her views on life, I knew I had to have her on the podcast. Kaitlyn is one of those people that brings positivity and comfort wherever she goes. She is so truly herself that she helps everyone else feel like they can better be themselves. I am just so grateful that we got to have this wonderful conversation. So let's take a deep breath and get started. We are good to go. Kaitlyn, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me and chat on this beautiful Monday evening. Most people would probably want their Monday to relax at home with their lovely, adorable cat. So thank you for being here and being so generous with your time.
I'm happy to be here. This is so exciting.
I'm glad you're excited. Okay, so first question that we always start with, just to kind of try and start the conversation on the right foot. What is one thing that you're grateful for?
Oh my gosh, I love that question.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, I used to do 3 things I was grateful for every day.
Yeah.
That was something I did for a while. One thing I'm grateful for is my sisters. I guess it's 2 things, but
no, that counts. We
yeah.
can put them together.
Yeah, my sisters.
Nice. Tell me a little why your sisters right now. Why did that occur to you?
I was just texting them earlier, and so I think they were just like top of mind for me. But we talk all of the time, and they don't live in Texas with me right now, so they live in Louisiana. So I think any time that I get to see them and chat with them and visit with them, I'm really grateful for. So
yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's really wonderful. And there's something really unique about sibling relationships too that's just unlike any other relationship you will ever have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they're built-in. It's like built-in friends.
Yeah.
Because we've changed so much and grown up together, and they're still around.
Yeah.
And it's one of those relationships that you get to hopefully have for your whole life. So something that's really special.
Yeah, it's really unique. My therapist says your siblings know how to push your buttons because they're the ones who installed them. And I think that is like the funniest thing, because it's so true, right? Like, growing up, when you were first like getting all of the like information about who you were going to be as a human being, like your siblings are part of that, and so that's why they're so good at like, they know you so well.
They know you better than most people.
Yeah, 100%.
I love it. We just dove right into it. I
love
it.
Absolutely. Okay, and then second question to kind of kick off our conversation is, it's a doozy. What is your story? And everyone always is like, whoa, that's a question. And yes, it is a question. But don't feel like you have to give me every single last detail. Whatever that question kind of means to you right now in this moment, and however you want to discuss that, like however you interpret it, I want to hear it.
Okay. Though this is definitely a doozy of a question.
Yeah.
It's very Brene Brown.
Yeah.
Love that. I love it.
That's definitely where this question is inspired by, is from her podcast, because that's a very frequent question that she asks.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a good question. Well, my name is Kaitlyn. I am originally from right outside of New Orleans. So I grew up my whole childhood in Louisiana. Something very special about Louisiana to me. I went to the University of Alabama, so I lived in Louisiana until I was 18. And then I went to the University of Alabama, so I lived in Tuscaloosa for 4 years. I studied business management and entrepreneurship. I minored in math and psychology.
Ooh.
So I was a little bit all over the place. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do.
We love a well-rounded queen.
Yeah, thank you. But my whole life, I've also been very interested in art and all types of art. So I took visual art classes from kindergarten until I graduated from high school.
Yeah.
And then when I got to Alabama, that kind of expanded a little bit, and I got more into poetry, so that side of things.
Yeah.
And then when I graduated from school, I got a job opportunity in Texas, and so that's when I moved to Dallas. And I've been here for about 2 years, almost 2 years.
Yeah.
So I know that was pretty brief, but overall, from start to finish, I'd say like that's my journey of
those are the
where
highlights
I've been so far. Yeah,
I love it. So obviously moving from the place that you've known your whole life, you said your sisters are still there. I'm sure your parents are still in Louisiana as well.
My parents are in Florida.
Oh my gosh, I did know that. We have talked about that before. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know we have talked a little bit about this, but tell me a little bit about the experience of moving to a new place where you don't know anyone. Because I think that's like a big thing that especially in this period of life, like people do all the time. But I think also some people hold themselves back because they're afraid of what that might mean. Like it feels like you don't have a safety net when you don't know anyone there, right? So what has that experience been like?
That experience has been one that's helped me grow a lot. And it was also different the first time I did it versus the second time I did it.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think it's because the first time I did it, you're always meeting new people when you're in school.
Yeah.
And so building friendships and building relationships can come a bit more naturally when you're put in an environment to meet new people every semester.
Yeah.
So it was a bit easier and clubs, right? Clubs on campus.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bit easier to find your people.
Mm-hmm.
And Tuscaloosa was a bit of a smaller city. Still a lot of people, but a bit smaller.
Yeah.
Whereas moving to Dallas, there's probably 7 or 8 different neighborhoods within Dallas.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
There's a lot more places to go, a lot more places to visit, and a lot more ways to meet people. So I almost had this moment of, I'm sure my people are here.
Yeah.
I just don't know where to find them.
It's almost like analysis paralysis, where you have so many options that it prevents you from taking just one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many things that you can do.
Yeah.
So it's how do I decide where to go and where to meet people? But there's also something very freeing about it because you can try new things.
Yeah.
And you can become pretty self-reliant. So I think that was the difference for me between my transition to college and then my transition to Dallas.
Gotcha.
Is when I first went to school, I was a bit more nervous to do things on my own.
Yeah.
And to do things by myself. And once I got more comfortable with doing things on my own and doing things by myself, it allowed me to try those new things and meet new people, and inherently, which is actually how we met.
Yeah.
So that was definitely the main difference in the two. But it's a tough transition for anyone.
Yeah.
But it's also very liberating and confidence building when you are able to build community and find people.
Yeah.
So it's also a great experience and opportunity for self-growth.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, the only experience they have with that is going to college for the first time, not this kind of young professional period of life where, you know, you are completely uprooting, you don't know anyone. I think that's much rarer. So that's really empowering to hear how putting yourself in a place of discomfort really, like, you've been able to reap the rewards of that. And we're using a lot of language of like freeing, liberating, taking on this kind of onus of control of your life. What does that feeling feel like now that you're working towards that? You have this greater sense of that. Talk to me a little bit more about that feeling.
It feels great now because I think I'm in a place where I do have a good community, and I do have friends that I'm very fortunate to have, like where I live.
Yeah.
But along the way, it can be quite a challenge.
Sure.
So it's definitely, there is some growing, growing that takes place. There are some growing pains, but I've gotten to a place where I'm able to recognize that if I'm not pushing myself to grow, or if I'm not pushing myself out of my comfort zone every now and then I'm not getting closer to the person that I want to be. And so it's almost like kind of having a conversation with yourself of, if I want to continue to grow and I want to continue to build relationships and build friendships, then sometimes you do have to put yourself in a situation that might make you a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But the more you do it, it's almost like building that muscle, right?
Yeah.
So like the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then there's always something new.
Yeah.
To try. There's always something new to do. So.
100%. Well, and you can never fully prepare for any experience, right? It's like every day is a new day. So, like, everyone's acting like we know how to act, but we're also all kind of faking that because none of us have ever lived this moment before. So it's like you don't have to pretend that you know what you're doing all the time. And I'm sure it's kind of the same thing there, where it's like, it's just a new experience. Of course, we're all just trying it. We're trying things.
Yeah, but how exciting is that?
Yeah.
Because you could meet someone tomorrow that could completely change your life.
100%.
And you just don't know that.
Do you ever think about how at literally any moment in time, we could all make a decision that drastically changes the course of your life? Like moving to Dallas, accepting a job offer. But then I even think about little things of like, if someone's been really struggling in a friendship and they decide to finally cut that person off, like, what would that look like for your life? If you finally decide to like make a move on that person that you've had feelings for forever. Like, you know, it's like any one decision has all of these ripple effects, and you could never imagine the consequences, good or bad, that could come out of those. But like you said, how exciting is that you really have that power, that possibility, a choice.
It's very exciting. And I think, I'm obviously very young, but I do feel like the older I get, the more you trust yourself to make the right decision.
Yeah.
And that's also very empowering. And I'm sure if I listen back to this in a couple of years, I'll probably...
You were so young. You don't know anything about what you're talking about.
No, but you're able to build that trust, and you can trust your own judgment.
Absolutely.
To make the right decision.
And even though we're both young, but I still think it's a good thing to reflect on how you've grown. And yes, in a couple years, we'll both probably listen back and be like, oh, the things I know now. But at the same time, I think it's great to be able to acknowledge, like, I do have more growing to do, but also I have grown so much.
Yeah.
And, like, you already have a better sense of, like, who you are.
Yeah.
On that, you were talking about how this journey has been in large part about getting to be closer to the person that you want to be. And you've also talked about trusting yourself in that process and trusting what feels right for you. Tell me a little bit about that process. Like, what does trusting yourself look like? What does that feel like in your body? And trusting yourself to get closer to the person you want to be. This is kind of a part B of the question, but how have you characterized the person that you want to be? And has that been I guess for both of these elements, are these more intuitive things that it's just like, I know that that's the kind of person I want to be, or I know that this feels right for me, or has there been a little bit more conscious effort in defining what those things look like? That was like 7 questions in one. I can absolutely ask them again.
No. I'm following. And I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So I think some of it is a bit more intuitive.
Sure.
In terms of, hey, this experience is really calling out to me. This is something that I really want to do. So on a very, I guess, simple level, there was one time that there was an art event that I really wanted to go to, but I didn't want to go by myself, and so I didn't go. And so that feeling of, oh, I really wanted to go, but I didn't go because I didn't want to go by myself.
Yeah.
That just didn't sit right with me, and so I consciously, so it's both subconscious and conscious, but I consciously told myself, I don't want to be someone who skips something because I don't want to go alone. And so then that was a conscious effort of me saying, okay, well, now I'll go to things alone because I want to go to them. So that's one example. But I think on a broader level, trusting myself has taken a lot of conscious effort because, and my therapist put it like this, if you have a friend who every single day they tell you, yeah, we can go to the gym together tomorrow morning, and then every single day they don't show up, you're not going to believe that friend or trust that friend.
Yeah.
And so subconsciously, for me, right, it was hard to trust my own decision making and my own judgment when I wasn't always showing up for myself when I told myself I would.
Beautifully poignant way of framing that, because absolutely, if I had a friend who was like, yeah, absolutely, we're gonna wake up at 5 a.m. and work out together, and then we're gonna like cook dinner together, and they just didn't show up, I'd be, we're not friends, you're not someone I want to be friends with, and you should be someone that you want to be friends with, that you can trust in that way, right?
Because you're really, yes, I know, thank you. But it's, your relationship with yourself is arguably the most important relationship that you'll have, because it's the one that lasts your whole entire life. And so,
and I think it's also, in terms of your relationship with yourself, again, similar to the sibling relationship, it's different from every single other relationship, obviously, because it's the only one that we are consciously like aware of and experiencing in the present moment. And in some way, we are kind of prisoners to ourselves in that way, that you can never escape your own mind, your own self. Like, this is always who you will be, the body that you are in, the mind that you are in. And if you're trapped in that place, you can either look at it as an entrapment and like, this sucks, I can't ever break free of being who I am, or I get to choose to cultivate a lifelong like romance with myself, with this person, like that is going to be deeper and more intimate than anything ever could be. It's like you really do have that choice. And to comment a little bit on your discussion of learning to trust yourself and that experience of that, don't let me put words in your mouth, but it sounds very much like it's using your conscious thought to trust the subconscious, like incorporating these two things together as opposed to letting them exist separately. It's almost been this like merging of the conscious and the subconscious that's allowed you to do that.
Yes. And it takes and it's still a work in progress, right?
Sure,
it's always
absolutely.
going to be
always a work in progress.
Yes, always work in progress. But it takes time.
Yeah.
Because even thinking about the brain and how the brain works and neural pathways and like getting into a little bit of psychology here, but at first you're always going to resort to what you've done historically.
Yeah.
Because you haven't laid that new path yet. And so you're almost fighting against your subconscious.
Yeah.
Until it becomes habit.
Like you said, that new muscle memory, right? You have to start flexing that muscle in order to be able to rely on it.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. I love the language of neural pathways, because I remember the first time that I kind of learned the psychology behind that and how our brains, similarly to human beings, have pathways that we walk. And if you take the same walking trail every single day and it's your walking trail, eventually you'll know that pathway by heart and you'll be able to just take that pathway, right? Easy. But if one day you decide something about that pathway isn't right anymore, if you go on autopilot, you're still going to go back to that old pathway. And it's the same exact thing for your brain, right? Like you've ground these grooves into your brain so consistently that if you're not actively trying to climb out of that one into another one, whenever you are just like freeballing on autopilot, it's like when you have just moved houses and you're on autopilot driving home and you drive to your old house. Just because
yes,
that's what your brain knows.
Yes. It's I don't know where my thought was going here, but I was going to say something along the lines of,
you're fine. It'll come back. But yes, these different neural pathways and falling into the old ones versus an active choice of picking a new one.
Yes. And so it takes a lot of, this is what I was going to say, is it takes a lot of presence and awareness of what you're feeling, because even if an old habit was something that wasn't healthy for you or wasn't good for you, if you're not aware and conscious of how you're feeling and how you want to react to it, you're going to fall back into that old habit.
Wow.
Just like driving to your old house.
Yeah.
But even if it's something that's not healthy, if it was a habit, then it's still something that you'll rely on because your brain knows, hey, this is what I did.
Yeah.
It's
comfy.
Right.
It makes sense. It's your old, well-worn t-shirt,
right.
You know? Like
that doesn't quite fit right.
Right.
But you haven't bought a new one.
And it's still comfy, so like I'm just going to throw it on.
Yes.
But until you realize actually it doesn't fit right. You know, until you're consciously aware in the present moment, exactly like you were saying, of how is my body reacting to this? Mm-hmm. How mentally am I reacting to this? How do I really feel in this moment? Mm-hmm. If you're not asking yourself those questions, it takes a certain aspect of, like you said, self-awareness, but also like honesty with yourself.
Yes.
And that goes back to like what you said about being your own best friend, that if you're not being honest with yourself, of course you're not going to trust yourself.
Right.
Because yourself lies to you.
Yes, yes. And have you talked about the difference or learned about the difference between self-awareness and self-management?
No. Tell me more. I'm like, I have a gut instinct as to what it could be, and so that's where my brain went, but I don't think I've heard it ever laid out, so I would love to know.
It ties a bow on what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And so self-awareness is, hey, I recognize how I'm feeling. I recognize what I'm thinking, but it's not actually taking an action on it. It's just the awareness of, hey, this is or isn't working for me. And then self-management is the ability to do something about it.
Wow. That makes perfect sense. So it really is like thought, recognition, and then action. Mm-hmm. And how those are very different, but also you can't have one without the other.
Right.
Yeah, they're still so intimately linked. That's, like you said, it just perfectly kind of ties a bow on that. I love that. I love having new concepts and language to talk about things because it makes things so much more accessible. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Okay. I want to round back to a couple different things, but we will start with how you were talking about your journey with art and visual art, and then that kind of transitioned into some performance art as well, and what that piece of your selfhood has kind of looked like and how that's developed as you've grown too.
Yeah. I would say when I was younger, I don't even remember necessarily what drove me or brought me to art at the very beginning, but what I liked about it is that it combined a bit of technicality with creativity. So when you're in an art class and you learn, hey, you mix these colors, and then there's a science behind it, and it becomes this new color, and then, but you also have that creativity and that free liberty to make something that didn't exist before and that you made and that is yours, but also has like that technicality behind it. And I think the art that I still enjoy the most and enjoyed the most when I was younger is the art that's like not necessarily for anyone else. So if I was getting graded on something, or if I had to turn something in, or if it was going to be scored,
it's a little different.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
It always feels interesting to me, like, how there's art competitions and, like, how you can literally, like you said, study art, major in art, like, when it's so subjective. And, of course, you know, you have all this stuff that's, like, you have to learn the rules to know how to break them, and yes, absolutely. Like you said, there is a technique there, and there are techniques to learn and to become very masterful of, and yet that is not like the magic that you get when you go to a museum, when you stare at a work, when you interact with a work. It really is not about the technique that they've put into it, but the exchange that's now happening between perceiver and art, right?
Yes.
And like that live moment, and for someone to then be like, that experience was a B+. It's just very interesting to me. So talk to me about art that you do just for you.
Oh, I wish I had more to say on this. I don't do as much art now as I used to, but I do. It's something that I want to get back to because it's something that I really miss.
Yeah.
So whether it was painting, and sometimes I would paint something and then just throw it away.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this is exactly how I was feeling in this moment, and no one else will ever have to see this, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, this was one day or one moment, and then you just toss it.
And there's also, like, this is me maybe being, like, very me about this and, like, having deep thoughts and, like, projecting them on where they don't exist, and that is a flaw of mine to, like, read into things. However, I do think that, like, throwing an art piece away or damaging an art piece is an act of art in and of itself. Like, you're adding something into this creation that you did, and if you are the only one perceiving it, that completely changes that work than if you were to give it to someone or show it to someone, or the purpose behind when you were making it, right?
On that note, there's a video by Hank Green.
Oh, I love Hank Green.
And if you haven't seen it, you need to watch it.
Okay.
And he talks about the vulnerability and the fear that goes into sharing something that you've created. Because as soon as you share something that you've created, it's no longer yours.
He was talking about this about his novel, yes?
So this was before his novel.
Okay.
This was years ago, I believe. I'm sure he talked about it with his book too, in a very similar vein. But what he gets to in the video is that there's a level of vulnerability that comes in sharing something that you've created because it's a piece of you.
Yeah.
And to that end, the scariest thing, but also the most important thing, is that you are also your own work of art that you create and that you share.
Yeah.
And some people get to see more of it than others, but there's still inherently this level of fear that comes with creating yourself and sharing yourself, because when you do share more of yourself with people, it's a part of yourself that isn't just yours anymore.
Yeah.
It's a part of yourself that other people have thoughts and opinions and feelings on.
Wow.
And that can be a really scary thing to do.
Yeah. There is I think it's a Van Gogh quote that is one of my favorite quotes, but it's like, make your life your greatest work of art. And it is something that has just, I think I saw it in like middle school, and I was like, oh my goodness, yes, that's me. I'm going to live like a work of art. Like, not quite fully appreciating it, but like
subconsciously, maybe.
I think subconsciously, maybe a little bit, but like you said, as you get older and like you return to things, or things grow with you as you grow, right? And so, absolutely, I totally agree with that, and I love this idea of living your life as a work of art. But I've never added in that piece of, well, like with any other work of art, when you share it with someone, you are giving it away. Mm-hmm. It is no longer yours. As a creator, as an author, as an artist, you no longer have full ownership or what word am I looking for?
Control.
This is going to bother me now if I don't come up with this word.
It's okay.
It's the word when parents are custody.
Custody.
You no longer have full custody over this thing, right? And so sharing yourself with other people it's kind of like popping your rib cage open, right? And like allowing them to like see those ugly bits, is saying that like your opinion on it is going to alter me.
Yeah.
Is going to change who I am.
But it's changing the version of you that exists in their mind.
Right, externally to yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that also makes me think of something my therapist says, which is, what other people think about you is none of your business. Which I'm like, I just need that tattooed on my forehead, because it's such a good reminder. But it's like, it is true. However, the consequences of that, I think acknowledging that those still impact you and change you is important, but to keep in mind that whatever they are choosing not to share with you, even if it is about you, is also within their prerogative to do, right? And so it's this really like fraught interaction where it's like, if you're taking this idea that we are our own work of art and sharing it, it becomes this shared thing. However, you get your own say on this work of art, and you don't have to share your opinion about that with me, because that would be sharing this other part of yourself that is in your custody until you want to share it.
Yeah. And everyone is also creating themselves.
Yeah.
And is also creating, to that end, like their own work of art. And so, because everyone has years and years and years of life and experience that you'll never fully see, that have made them the person that they are, that also ties into you sharing yourself and you know what I mean? So it's,
yeah. Well, it's almost like, you know, when you're little, I feel like I have like an analogy for everything today. So I'm sorry if this is like hard to follow. But when you make the artworks in like kindergarten where it's just a splatter of paint and then you fold the paper in half and you kind of squish it together, I feel like sometimes when you meet people, it's kind of like squishing these two paintings together where like you impact each other and you're allowing someone else to both have access to your work of art, but also interact with it.
Yeah,
and
you
like,
share paints.
You share paints.
And then all of a sudden, you're this new version of you that is someone who listens to the music that your freshman year roommate in college listened to, and you bake the cookie recipe that your best friend from work,
Yes.
The recipe that they used, or you do your hair. I do my hair the way that my sister taught me, or do my makeup a certain way because someone else taught me.
Beautiful that your work of art can also be co-authored,
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's a combination of all of the people that you've been close to.
Yeah. And yet it's still you. It's still yours. At least your version within your own reality is 100% yours.
Yes, because there are lots of people who listen to Taylor Swift and listen to Harry Styles, or, like certain things, or, of course there are so many people on the planet, but there's something inherently special for everyone that there's no one else on the planet with every single experience that you have that also likes every single thing that you like.
Yeah, there's no way.
And that's really cool.
It's really freaking cool. Really cool. Yeah. Well, and now I'm also, like, my brain is running in a tangent about, like, the infinite uniqueness that we all have, and yet also how we're so infinitely tied to one another because the human experience is so universal. So it's like you have that plus this, like, absolute uniqueness, and it's once again like this tension of both of those things. But we'll kind of round back to that in a second.
Okay.
Because before we dive into that a little bit more of a metaphysical conversation, I want to talk a bit more about not specifically Hank Green or the Vlogbrothers, even though obsessed with both of them. They're wonderful. They've done so much just great work for the world and the humanities and community. But we also mentioned Brene Brown at the top of the episode. So these are three people, Hank Green, John Green, Brene Brown, that we've mentioned and talked about as being inspiring and informative into this journey. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about, kind of your thoughts about their work in general and anyone else that you kind of find important to you in this journey that you'd like to throw out there.
Yeah. I love Brene Brown.
Yeah, same. This was like one of the first things we bonded about.
I know, we've talked about this before, but she's so special to me, so inspirational. So she's definitely played a big part in how I look at the world. That's been more of a recent, I'd say within the last 3 to 4 years that I've really started listening to more of her content and reading her books. Whereas with the Green brothers, I have been watching their videos since I was very young.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, but something that I think they have in common is all of their work is based in, at least in my opinion, based in kindness and wanting to make the world a little bit better than it was when they got here. And that's through their research, through their charity work, through their art, right? Doing what they can to better understand their version of the human experience.
Wow. Yeah.
And share that with people, ultimately making people feel less alone.
Freaking, I'm like, print everything you just said on a t-shirt, please, so I can wear it. That is so, I'm like, words are failing me because I don't even have a proper way to reflect how much I agree with what you just said.
Yeah.
And why I think so many people are drawn to them.
Yeah.
Because the three of them are such different people and do very different things. However, they've attracted both of us, right? And so I'm sure they attract plenty of the same people across their work. And there is a very similar heart, and I do think that you are 100% correct that it's the driving force behind it of, I want to better understand my sliver of the human experience to help me better serve.
And it's authentic.
Yes.
It's the authenticity that's so inspirational. And I think that's what draws so many people to them and their work. Someone else that inspires me in that way on the poetry side is Mary Oliver.
Ooh.
I don't know if you're a Mary Oliver fan.
Love Mary Oliver.
Her poem, Wild Geese, changed my life.
Yeah.
So, she also has that level of authenticity and that level of realness.
Yep.
And so I think that's, again, can be scary, but also being true to yourself inherently will allow you to make the right connections with the right people.
So, not to belabor this, life is your greatest work of art analogy too much, but to draw back on that, these are 4 people that obviously there's plenty more out there, but that have shared their life as art work on a really large scale. What do you think resonates with you about the authenticity? What is it that when you say it is authentic, what gives you that feeling that you can kind of pick up on that? Because I totally agree, but it's like, what's the difference there between that and someone else who may not have that same level of openness or honesty, but these 4 people, again, not the only ones that have this, do. What is it about that gives you that impression, that feeling?
Yeah, I think there's a rawness to their work where they don't pretend to have all of the answers, or they don't always act like, oh, everything's fine. Like, they have this level of transparency to life isn't great all of the time. Life is actually pretty hard a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing my best to grow and figure things out and share that with others. And of course, there's a lot of joy. I don't mean to say life is hard all of the time, but they have this level of authenticity of, like, it's okay if things sometimes aren't okay.
Yeah.
And still learning and growing and pouring into others along their journey. That makes them stand out to me.
Yeah. Almost living their life as an example of what they're doing, right? Like, you're not just standing on a pedestal saying, these are my recommendations, but it's really opening the doors in a safe, boundary-ridden way of letting people bear witness to the way they're living their life as, I'm imperfect, but these are principles that I try and live by and teach.
And sometimes I mess up, and then I try again.
Yes. Yeah. And we will always do better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. To kind of tie all of this together, I always inevitably like to get into opinions about the universe and kind of ultimate meaning and how did you get here and what does it all mean?
Reese.
I'm coming at you with the big questions. But I'm like, your story is a really beautiful part of that question for all of us. And so I really want to hear what your take on all of that is. And I know that we've talked about it a little bit in our own time, but to kind of capture some of that and dive a little bit deeper. Because also I think in this conversation that we're having about, living with authenticity and striving to be a better version of yourself while opening yourself up to other people and acknowledging the difficulty of that, the beauty of that, the spectrum of experiences we can have while still, at the end of the day, you know, when your head hits that pillow, knowing our time here is limited. And part of what makes your life a work of art is that one day it will be finished. Whether that's within this lifetime, that it's just finished and you believe that that's all that there is, or that, you know, another soul picks it up where you left off, or yeah, I think that a lot of what we have said leads us very nicely into that, and I want to know your thoughts. I'm kind of rambling now, but I want to hear it.
No, I'm following. It's a big question.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'll ever know
right
the full answer.
I wouldn't believe anyone who said they did.
That's fair. That's fair. I think at the end of the day, when I'm gone, I hope that I look back and know that I led a life that was led by love first. And when I was in high school, I don't know how I'm thinking of this now.
No, please continue down where you're thinking.
Yeah, I think it was my senior quote, but I don't remember 100%. But I think the quote was, I hope that others leave me a little bit happier than when they got to me. Something along those lines. So I think, like, acknowledging that life is really hard, but I hope that, if anything, what I'm here to do is to help other people figure things out. And I hope that I'm doing that from a place of love.
Yeah.
Which, again, is a big topic.
Yeah.
But I think if I can do that, I'll be
good.
Yeah.
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 Where does that philosophy stem from for you?
That's a good question.
It can totally be just your intuition, like, this is, like you said, you feel like this is what you are here to do. And if that is just like this kind of internal drive towards that, absolutely valid.
Yeah.
Just curiosity.
I've been really fortunate to have some people in my life who have gotten me through some tough times. And so almost wanting to be able to do that for other people as well is something that really drives me. And I think I've also learned that, like, it doesn't cost anything to be kind.
Yeah.
And so it does come from a place of wanting to be able to be there for people the way that other people have been able to be there for me.
Yeah.
But I think it also, I don't know. I'm gonna be thinking about that, though, because that's a really good question.
Thanks. And I don't say that to try and stump you or to try and put pressure on that at all.
No, I'm here for it. Things are meant to be questioned.
Well, and I'm like, how do I want to say this? I probably have not met anyone that has such a similar life philosophy to my own other than you. Like, you're one of the people that I have met that I am, like, kind of cut from the same cloth in that way.
Yeah.
So it genuinely is this question of, like, for me, just curiosity and wanting to know more, because I'm also asking this of myself, right?
Yeah.
So that's very much my motivation behind those questions. But
no, I love it.
What sacred simplicity in that as well. Like, I want to lead a life by love first. I think, like, simple sentence that carries so much. And I think that we see that as a unifying thread across a lot of religions, a lot of spiritualities, a lot of life philosophies. And yet, I think, unfortunately, that is often the first piece that can be lost when it's weighed down by the complexities of other elements of religion or process or spirituality or organization or any of that, right? And not to say that those aspects are always bad or detract. I think a lot of the time, like, ritual can really enhance your experience. But I think that as the core of your belief system is so beautiful. And it just clarifies for me why I think I'm drawn to you as a person so much, but also why there is this unifying thread across worldviews.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that really what we all should be striving for? And I think, unfortunately, that is the piece that, because it is so simple, and yet probably the hardest mantle of all of it, right? That it can slip through the cracks. Also, you're so right. There is no cost to being kind, to lead with love. It costs you nothing. And one of my great mentors, whose podcast is actually coming out, I think it'll be the episode before yours, actually, so hopefully everyone will have just listened to the episode with Cedric James. But he was the first person who told me this metaphor. I'm sure it comes from somewhere else, but I'm going to credit him with it. He has always said that in life we all have our own candle. And it always gives me this image of, like, a vigil or something where everyone has their own little candle. And you meet a lot of people whose flame has been put out or hasn't been lit yet. And it is our job to use our candle to light that wick. And when we pull our candle back, our flame is not any less strong. It shines just as brightly. It is just the same amount. Lighting someone else's candle takes nothing away from you. It costs absolutely nothing. And yet we look at it like it's an unrenewable resource, but it is the constantly renewable energy, is love and kindness.
2 thoughts.
Yes, please. I've been talking for so long and I want to hear all your thoughts.
No, this is beautiful, but 2 thoughts. One, I think going back to trying to lead a life led by love, I think it can be easy not to, because there's so many scary things in the world.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to, if you've seen Tick, Tick, Boom.
Yes.
The musical, when he says, like, am I being led by fear or by love?
Yes.
It can be very easy to be led by fear instead.
Yeah. Understandably so, because there are so many really difficult things that people go through. Yeah. And I'm like, as someone who lives a very privileged life, it's easy for me to sit here and be like, everyone should be doing this. Yeah. But
yes.
Yeah.
But going back to the candle and Brene Brown, so very full circle.
I love that.
In one of her specials, I don't remember if it was the show on HBO or if it was the one on Netflix. But she describes to her daughter, your energy is a candle. And so when your light is burning bright, you need people who are going to surround you and protect your flame, and not candle blower outers. And not people who want to diminish your light when it's shining bright.
Yeah.
But I also love the analogy of being able to light other people's candles too.
Yeah. I think both of those are true, because I think when we're looking at, again, another analogy, but this candle as an analogy for our energy, for our love, I think if you look at it as a non-renewable resource, it can be scary to see someone else's shining really bright, because your gut instinct is protect what I need to survive. And so seeing someone else with a lot of something, I think that's where like that gut instinct of like envy or anything, upsetness about someone else having that, I think it really comes from a fallacy.
It's fear. I'm not good enough.
It's that fear that I'm not good enough to have that same level of flame, of brightness. And I will always remember the first time my mom said this to me, because it was in like 5th grade, 6th grade, you know, when you kind of start going through the mean girl stuff, and middle school is hard.
It is.
But she was like, I for some reason, I think someone might have like said something to me that hurt my feelings after like someone had complimented me, and she said, here's the thing. You being beautiful takes no beauty away from anyone else. And someone saying you are beautiful does not mean someone else is not also beautiful.
Yes.
And it's 100%, you're so on it, that fear. Like you hear that for someone else and it's like fear. Like the figures of it start creeping in, and it still happens to me to this day where like you hear that, you see that, and those like little tendrils of fear creep in.
I think it was an Instagram post, but very similar to what your mom said, of, you know, it's beautiful, sunsets and flowers.
Yep.
And the beach. And name almost anything else that's beautiful, right? Like you think of so many things when that comes to mind.
Yeah.
And just because a flower or a tree or a sunset is beautiful doesn't also mean that a candle or a song, or it doesn't take away from that beauty. Like both things can exist.
It's not a pie.
Right.
Right. You don't have to divvy up the beauty. Yes. You don't have to divvy up the love, right? Like these are overflowing things. I love that. I feel like people are going to listen to this and be like, they just agree with each other. Which
That's
I'm like,
okay.
I think so too. Okay. I'm going to get into some rapid fire questions, which I don't always do, but I think they're kind of fun, and we have a couple minutes, so I want to do rapid fire. Do you believe in ghosts?
Yes.
Have you ever had a ghost experience?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. But you do. Where do you think that...
Yes, I'm from Louisiana.
Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
Yes.
Do you think that's tied to energy, tied to spirit, tied to an afterlife? Or is it more just one of those things where you're like, I believe that there is something, but it's still a little question mark murky?
The second.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
I love that. 100%. Yeah. That I'm kind of there too, where I'm like, there's obviously energy, but I couldn't explain what that looks like.
I don't know why, but there's energy.
Yeah, 100%. Aliens.
Logically speaking, the universe is so big that I do think that something else would have to exist.
Yeah, but it's probably not a green man with antennas.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if it would ever get here.
Yeah.
If it's that far. I have no idea. But logically speaking, I think I want to say yes.
Yeah. I love it.
Because there's too many other universes and planets.
Yep.
100%. For us to be the only one that was able to create life.
Right? Like it. And the universe is also ever expanding, right? So it's like if the universe is constantly expanding and we were just part of that expansion that was really rapid at the very beginning, but somehow we were created during the expansion that, you know, scientists call the Big Bang. Why couldn't that happen further down? I don't know. Clearly I'm not a scientist. I don't understand the science behind it. But so interesting. Favorite color?
Oh, Okay, I think I'm gonna say my favorite color has always been purple.
Yeah, go frogs.
It's always been purple, but I think that's my favorite color in theory, and in practice, it's green. I have a green couch. Most of my, not most, but a lot of my clothes are green.
You're completely changing my approach to colors. I'm like, that is so true that so many people are like, I love this color, but I'm like, I've never seen you wear that color. And it's like, well, that doesn't mean you don't like that color.
Yeah.
But you totally have a different favorite color in theory and in practice. Like, absolutely.
Because since I've been a kid, I've always just loved like a light purple or like a lavender. And I still do, but I don't really wear purple.
Yeah.
And I never paint my nails purple.
Right?
So, but I think like an olive or like a dark
forest, earthy green.
Yes.
I love that. How fun that you have a green couch too.
I do love that couch, yeah.
I love that. Okay, favorite food.
That's tough.
It is tough.
How does anyone decide?
I don't know. You can also have a favorite meal.
Yes. I guess my mind goes straight to ice cream. I mean, who doesn't like ice cream?
Love. Specific flavor, brand, store, any strong opinion about ice cream. How about that?
Well, I do love Bluebell.
Thank goodness.
I love Bluebell. Specifically, the mint chocolate chip.
Okay.
Is really good. Cookie Two-Step is also really good.
Cookie Two-Step is so good.
So good.
Oh my gosh.
And if I'm having Ben & Jerry's, then it has to be Americone Dream.
Love.
Yes.
Really good. Okay.
Yes.
That is all I have for speed round. So I have my last two questions to kind of wrap up our conversation. The first of the two is there anything we missed? Is there anything that you want to clarify, go back over, throw something else out? Or it can be completely different from everything we've talked about that you're like, the mic is hot, I want to throw this out there. This is time for you to kind of say anything that you feel needs to be said. Oh, bless you.
Thank you. The last thing I would say is that everyone's doing their best. And I genuinely believe, and yes, I got this from Brene Brown, but I genuinely believe that my life feels better when I also believe genuinely that everyone is doing their best.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm not even going to add anything to that because it is exactly what it needs to be, and I agree, and I love that.
Nice.
Okay, very last thing to round out our podcast. I need one word that describes how you're feeling right now. And it doesn't have to be some fancy word. It can be just whatever's the first thing that comes to mind that feels right.
I'd say vulnerable. Not to be cheesy. I know we've talked about Brene Brown so much. But we've also talked about a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
We've talked about a lot. So I think I am feeling vulnerable, but I think that I also feel seen because we've talked about so much.
I am so glad. That makes me so happy. Well, that is all that I have. Again, I want to thank you for your time and energy and your vulnerability and showing up authentically. Yes, you're talking about how beautiful that is for other people to do, but you need to know that you do that on a daily basis and you do that for me. And what's this quote? I think you posted it on your story today, actually, the one that's I want to be the type of person that is so myself that it lets other people show up as themselves.
I did post that on my story.
I'm like, I saw this just today, and I'm like, it was totally on Kaitlyn's Instagram story. You are someone who does that for me. So
thank you, Reese.
Thank you for showing up in the way that you do and for being here and letting me share your light via podcast with people.
Thank you. This was a joy.
I'm so glad.
Fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for being here today, and another big thank you to Kaitlyn for her time. I would love for each of you to be a part of the conversation, so please share your thoughts on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or LinkedIn, all at the Cohere Collective. If you want more of Kaitlyn, you can follow her on Instagram at cahill.kaitlyn. If you want to hear my in-depth thoughts about today's episode, you can head to thecoherecollective.com and click on blog. You can subscribe to Cohere on our website and access even more meaning-making content. And please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave an honest review or rating. If you believe in what the Cohere Collective is doing and you believe in making meaning, that would mean so much to me. Thank you to Podington Bear for making Meaning's theme music and Nicole Ostreicher for making Meaning's art and podcast cover. You can find Nicole's work on Instagram at Nicole O Creates or at Nicole O Design. Right now, I am feeling warm, but in the emotional way, not the temperature way. Yes, this has just been a good week, and being able to reflect on this conversation that I had with Kaitlyn and the wonderful weekend ahead of me, I have the warm and fuzzies. I'm really looking forward to the next couple weeks, and I'm looking forward to catching y'all next time. Love.